Welcome to Illusion HorrorCon 2025. You are about to hear a recorded panel discussion featuring game designers, writers, and community members from across the tabletop role-playing space. Please note that the views and opinions expressed during these panels are those of the individual panelists and moderators and do not necessarily reflect the views of Illusion Horror and Con, its organizers, sponsors, or partners. These discussions may include mature themes, critical perspectives, and personal experiences related to tabletop role-playing games, horror, and creative work. Listener discretion is advised. Panel topics are intentionally open to the attendees' interpretation. Our moderator and panelists are encouraged to explore the subject freely, share their own experiences, and engage in thoughtful discussion. Time has also been set aside for audience questions and contributions. This recording is part of the Illusion HorrorCon 2025 Untethered Realities. For more information about the convention, upcoming and past events, please visit our website or join us on Discord. And now, let's begin the panel.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our panel today. I'm so excited to have everyone join me here. I'm Camille. I am a actual player on various podcasts, mainly How We Roll, but I kind of appear here and there and everywhere like a bad smell, so you might have come across me in other places. I am also a voice actor, a counselor, and a drag artist. I put in my little bio, so I like to keep busy. What can I say? And today we are discussing the topic of unconventional horror settings in RPGs. And I truly believe that with the power of imagination and a tendency to root out the terrifying like the most twisted travel pigs, horror TTRPG creators, GMs, and players can find horror even in the most unconventional places. I mean, why limit ourselves to the conventional when horror subverts and defies convention? So that was my little written intro. And I've got a bunch of amazing people in the space with me today to talk about unconventional horror settings and how we may use and abuse them in different ways in our scenarios. So I'll do a little round robin of introductions. So I'll start with the person sort of nearest me on my screen, which is Michael. Please introduce yourself.
Oh dear, I'm first this time as well. Hi, my name is Michael Petersen. I'm from Sweden. I have been I guess you could call it professional writer of RPGs since 1982. I published the first game in 1984. I am mostly known for being the co-author with my partner Gunilla Jönsson of Cult, the original Cult in 1991. Lately, we've been working on the campaigns for Cult Divinity Lost, Troubleshooters, Dragonbane, and writing 3 horror novels published professionally in Sweden. So that's basically me. I'm kind of old and grey, but still kicking.
Still kicking. We love it. And Paul, you're next on my list. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Paul Baldowski. I'm going grey. I am old. I have by day the horror that I embrace is being a business analyst. But when I get the opportunity not to do one of those serious day job type things, I am both an indie publisher publishing the likes of Cthulhu Hack, the Desanction, Sanction, and most recently Kirk Bird. And I also freelance for various companies, including Free Leagues for Symbaroum, Chaosium for Rivers of London, Pelgrane for Night's Black Agents, Mongoose for Paranoia, and the Gauntlet. I did some work on Trophy.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul. Relatable. It's the day job and capitalism, the true horror. Awesome. And Kim, please introduce yourself. So lovely to have you here.
All right. Hi, my name is Kim Godwin. By day, or when the sun is mostly up, usually, I am in the United States Navy. But I am a professional freelancer for tabletop RPG development and writing, and I've done so for the past 5 years. I've worked with mostly Onyx Path Publishing, but I also am working with Helmgeist on a cult scenario. I'm also working with the Sons of Singularity on another scenario. So I've done a variety of I think my genre is yes right now. I do a lot of a little bit of everything. I also write for web novels, so I do a lot of romance as well as a lot of horror stories that sometimes they intertwine in interesting ways. I have a weird background. Um, I'm a forensic science criminal justice major for my undergraduate, but I'm a geographic information systems and then a master of strategic intelligence person. So I have a lot of weird um, procedural stuff and a lot of analytic stuff, in addition to all my horror writing and my TTRPG writing. So it's kind of an interesting mix.
Awesome. And it might be interesting to hear how maybe some of those things interact in terms of setting use and what you bring into your stuff. That's so cool. Awesome. And Dee, welcome to the panel today.
Hi, thank you. In the interest of, earlier, I think Kim heard this, that I'm just going to keep introducing myself in different ways at every panel. So I am Danielle Lauzon. I am a game designer and developer. I have worked on lots of things for Onyx Path Publishing, Curseborn, some Chronicles of Darkness stuff. I got my start on Chronicles of Darkness back in the day when it was still the New World of Darkness. And I too have a very weird smattering of not what I do. My day job is to write and develop RPGs, and also project manage for Board Game Company, the board game company that makes Gloomhaven. And I am in charge of getting the Gloomhaven RPG ready for publication. So, but in a past life, I have a master's in animal nutrition, and I wanted to be a veterinarian, and I got accepted to vet school, but I was put on like a wait list, and I had to make a decision of what to do. And I was like, oh, I'll go get a master's. And then they accepted me. And I was like, actually, this master's thing sounds really cool. So I'm just going to go do that instead. Um, and so I worked through an entire master's degree, started a PhD program even, but life kind of happened and I had to quit the PhD program and realized that the only way to get a job in my chosen field of study was to move somewhere like, I don't know, the Dakotas and in the US. And I was there was no way I was going to move to states that most people can't identify on a map, that are also very cold. So I kind of abandoned that path and started to work in a research lab doing biochemistry and microbiology, like hypothalamic research on the brain and nutrition related stuff, but mostly obesity research and things like that. So a lot of my experience prior to game writing was in research, science, very hard sciences, lots of applied science and theoretical science, doing lots of that. So I bring a lot of that to my games writing when I write. So.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really impressive to hear people's different kind of experiences and skills that come in and different things that kind of inspire you and how we can twist that all into lovely little horror scenarios and different things we can bring in. That's really cool. And yeah, we also have Matthew with us today wearing the best shirt. I love the birds. I love the tropical. It's great.
Occupational hazard when we keep a whole load of birds downstairs. We've got 9 in our little flock. So everything from cockatiels, budgies, green cheek conures, parrotlets, the whole range.
Oh, that's the dream. I love tropical birds.
Oh yeah, great little fellas. It's not a house without a cockatiel.
Yeah. So yeah, Matthew, would you like to say a little more about yourself as well?
Yeah, I'm Matt Sanderson. I'm a freelance writer for TTRPGs. Primarily anything that has the machinations of the great old ones involved. So anything that has the word Cthulhu in the title. So the Call of Cthulhu, I've worked on Trail of Cthulhu as well. But also worked on Cult Divinity Lost. Also Vampire the Masquerade for their 20th anniversary edition they put out. But yeah, primarily those that involve Lovecraftian hot angles of horror. which is a nice counterpoint to the fact that by day I'm a credit analyst, so I play with lots of numbers and spreadsheets, and then by night I get to exercise and flex my writing muscles.
Awesome. Love that. Yeah, thank you for the introductions, everyone. I think I feel like the baby in the room. No, I had a lot of experience, but I'm just like, I get to hear from all these very experienced people with interesting things. Excellent. This is the job of a host. I love it. So we've had a few sort of pre-agreed questions that we've discussed a little bit beforehand. So I might launch into one of those to kind of kick off the discussion about unconventional settings. And I thought, let's sort of start definitionally in a way, I guess, in terms of what we're talking about here. What makes a setting unconventional for horror? So what defines something as unconventional for horror? And is it just that other creators haven't been using a particular setting? Is there anything else to it that might make it unconventional? What are your thoughts on this? And anyone feel free to jump in as you like.
For horror as a
Sorry.
do you want me to go or you want to go?
Yeah, no, you go.
So for horror as a genre, everything's been touched. Like we get into like weird places, like especially if you start talking about like for different age groups. Because like I was thinking about it, and it's like, well, when we start talking about things for children, is like it goes to even stranger places. So pretty much everything has been touched as far as horror as a genre, because we all told spooky stories on the playground, and then we come up with weird ideas. So those sorts of things are not abnormal. But when we start getting into we market and sell to the TTRPG community, it becomes a little bit more restrained because we want to sell stuff. But you have things like kids on like what is it? Tales from the Loop, where you have more like Stranger Things sort of horror.
Yeah.
And then you start getting in. So when people think of horror, they usually think of Call of Cthulhu. They usually think of vampires and werewolves and all those spooky things. And then there isn't as much sci-fi horror outside of like Aliens or Sloan Industries. But I think it's becoming more popular. But we don't see as much like outside of JRPGs, like stuff involving schools in at least the Western setting. So I think for that's a little bit more convention, and we're not really seeing so much, or we're seeing more liminal horror come out, but I'm not so much things like interacting with the online space. I think that's a little bit more unconventional now than it used to be.
I've certainly seen kind of that little rise in horror films of more kind of like online. I mean, we've had some tech horror today with Zoom, so we had it already on the brain of, online horror. And it's not something I've come across a lot in the TTRPG space myself. So that's, perhaps a newer area to tap into. But it's interesting, Kim, what you were saying about kind of almost the commercial or like attention viability of what is popular in the TTRPG horror space and what's already kind of established. In terms of sort of what then becomes conventional versus what's kind of less popular and less conventional. Yeah.
It feels like, I mean, this is in our introductions there was some reference to age, and it feels like there's a challenge with generational perspective in terms of what is a traditional horror, or I think in reference to what's just been said, finding a common point of perspective means that you have to go to, I guess, things that have been, shall I say, overworked, overdone, because everyone notionally is aware of Dracula or Frankenstein, and less so maybe Cthulhu. But I mean, clearly Cthulhu within role playing. I'm sure if I go to Bob random person in the street, he's more likely to have heard of Dracula than Cthulhu. But from a commercial point of view, traditional and conventional horror are those. It's either Dracula or it's a cabin in the woods type affair, where those tropes, those very so overworked potentially, that you can have an enjoyable challenge trying to find something new, but at the same time, age wise, I guess I'm going to suggest that we will each have different perspectives due to what we have been exposed to, over the course of time. And so it's like, those moments where you might like randomly call out a children's TV program, and suddenly realize that you're staring at a bunch of blank stares because what you've referenced doesn't quite make the generational shift. And it's so. I mean, when I was thinking about this session, I was trying to work out what is conventional, what is traditional. Never mind what's non-traditional or non-conventional, because I think it's. As noted, if you want to make money, perhaps you dive into something that feels like everybody's done it before, because that's the easy option. If you stick Cthulhu in front of it, you're probably going to make some sales, especially if you can get a new twist on it. But going for something unconventional is probably a little harder, because you need to, it's probably where you need to do a lot of playtesting to work out whether what you're going to come up with is actually going to make a connection with enough people to make it fun, viable, whatever.
So I have some opinions on that in general. So I think there is some pretty standard, like, what do you think about, ghost stories, right? Everybody, generationally, we can all accept that everybody has a ghost story. Everybody kind of knows what ghosts are, has a firm belief of ghosts or disbelief of ghosts, or, things like that. Also, aliens are a little less things. Zombie stories, like, it's interesting to me because zombie in media is very prevalent, and there's lots of movies and books and stories about zombie apocalypses and zombies in general. There are actually very few tabletop RPGs that explore playing a game in a zombie apocalypse. Like, I can name 2, maybe 3 off the top of my head if I'm stretching a third one. It's just not a place that I've seen a lot of people use as a setting for an entire RPG. And part of that is because, the trope of zombies is that the actual monster are the survivors, right? Like, the actual monster are the people, and the zombies are kind of a stand-in for some hubristic thing that people have done in general, and then a device to make people horrible to each other. So turning that on its head and making the zombie situation, you know, the fear actually about, like, what is going to get you in the middle of the night kind of thing. Um, there's some interesting aspects of what is traditional and what is not traditional. But I think it all comes from, when I think about what is not traditional, instead I think of what is unexpected. So, if you're describing a cabin, if you describe it as dilapidated, abandoned, uh, covered in moss, covered in trees, covered in whatever, you don't, people are going to expect some kind of horror element to attach itself. But if you describe a cabin at a Girl Scout camp and it's, brightly painted and filled with Girl Scouts who are going about their camp days, there's that is more unexpected to have an element of horror attached to it, unless we're talking like slasher horror, where, okay, well, there's going to be a lone killer who's going to start picking these campers off or things like that. But we can, I think, how you present things to be are we setting this up to look like a horror trope, or are we setting this up to look like something else and then revealing a horror trope?
To sort of the subversion of convention or the subversion of expectation that can sort of build up that horror in different ways and things and how
Right,
things are revealed. Yeah, I love that. And it's such an interesting point about the lack of zombie related scenarios. People feel free to put in the chat any that you've heard about, because I've certainly never played one myself. So
the only thing I can think of is the Dystopia Rising RPG that Onyx Path put out in collaboration with Eshkatan, who has a LARP that is a zombie apocalypse LARP, Dystopia Rising. And then I think there's Mark Renhagen did a weird kind of zombie thing.
Yep.
Death Throes from Kat.
Okay.
Our friend Kat Evans. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's 3.
all flesh must be eaten.
Oh, there you go.
Walking Dead.
Oh, they did do a Walking Dead RPG, yeah.
I wrote for one called Outlive Out Dead, where you actually got to play the zombie after you were killed.
Nice, okay. Yeah, there's just the fact that we can name like a handful, and instead of being like, okay, well, let's name a fantasy RPG.
Indeed.
How much time do you have?
So especially just across genre, things that could be conventional in film or in novels or elsewhere that hasn't kind of come in yet. So I'm seeing a lot of like contextual themes in terms of like, what genre are we thinking about? What generation are we thinking about? What is somebody's like context themselves and how sort of changeable that can be? Yeah. I think Michael and Matt, do you have anything to add?
I might have some small, if you excuse me, Matt. I think you were starting about the same time, but for me, I think horror also depends on the game system. If you're playing Vampire the Masquerade, at least in my time, it was almost supposed to be on these huge cities, the metropolises. You have to be running around in the dark. You have to hide from the Inquisition, from the other clans. The city was very much the stage for the playing. It would be kind of interesting to see a Vampire the Masquerade game placed out in somewhere in Mexico, out in the outback in Australia,
on a small island.
In small island, what happens in that case? And also, Call of Cthulhu tends to be in the liminal spaces outside the big centers. It's often placed in small towns or small villages, and the horror always comes from the outside. And I actually played a long time ago, Marcus Rowland wrote a traveler scenario which contained a shoggoth. So landed on this deserted base in a small moon somewhere in the star system, and you started to realize something strange is going on here, and something that shouldn't be there lives in that freight container. And it was a shoggoth. And that was a great surprise. And this was rather early. This is the early 80s we're talking about. So for me also, putting in something that shouldn't be there in the game is also a way to change it into horror. For example, I'm running a Star Trek Adventures campaign at the moment. And my poor players have not yet realized it, but they're about to face ghosts. Real ghosts. The undead people's ghosts. So I guess both the system and how you face people's expectations of this system can create horror in strange new ways.
Yeah, especially of that traveler example of kind of like the blending of settings and of the canons of different like systems and games, and how you can kind of subvert expectation or convention through that. It's a really interesting example.
I think from my end, I always fall back on one of Lovecraft's quotes. I think it was from Supernatural Horror in Literature, where he talked about how horror works best when it's shrouded in normality or mundanity. So the more that people can identify with what they consider the real world, when you then inject the horror or weirdness into that, it has the more impact. Which is why I think you find a whole lot of horror films are set during the modern era in typical settings where, on a very cynical commercialist angle, it's say they're all set in the modern US because that's where we're going to make the majority of our money, or maybe to a lesser extent over in Europe. But yeah, they're places that people are familiar with, parts of the world where they know they're going to make money, and it's going to be an audience that go, oh yeah, I know that place, or I live there, or I've been there. So for unusual or unconventional horror, again, maybe an occupational hazard from approaching this as from the Call of Cthulhu angle, I try to look at historical settings that people don't necessarily know much about. So diving back into not so much the distant past, my knowledge of the classical world, like Roman Empire or ancient Greece or ancient Egypt, I would love to know more about, but definitely presents its own barrier to entry that you need to know a lot about those settings before you can write about them, and B, then engage in a story by knowing what's the local currency, what's the kind of the local meals are like, what's the societal class structure in all these different times and places. But I try to find something again that folks can at least identify with certain concepts that are almost timeless. And one of those is, I think, war. That people know what a war is. There's a conflict between two sides. You just have to explain a bit of their motivations. And one that's definitely always been of interest to me because of just so many levels that it operates on is the English Civil War. You've got a political conflict as well as a underlying religious conflict that underlies the whole thing. And it's got so much variation that you can use there that with only a little bit of peppering and a little bit of pre-game information, you can prime your players to know what's going on in this context. You don't require a massive info dump for them to suddenly be on board. So something that's got at least connections into a modern setting or modern world that people understand, I think those work best as accessible, but still unusual or unconventional settings.
I really, as a player, I kind of get that point of like, oh, but how do I actually access this and how would I even approach this? And, wanting to build a character in that setting. So having something that someone can hang their hat on to be like, okay, yeah, I know this, even if I don't know this. So we can go in from there. Yeah. So how to make the unconventional accessible, I think is a really interesting point. Yeah.
We recently played a campaign in Cohorts Cthulhu, which is set in ancient Rome. It's also a rather interesting, strange new world. And also playing the Cthulhu mythos, placing it in Rome. So we both have a city for Call of Cthulhu, and we have a new time in the Roman Empire. We played this during basically just before Caligula started up his campaign and started taking actually over the country. So we actually met Caligula, we helped Caligula coming to power. And in this background, we also have the Cthulhu mythos with dreamlands. We had the different creatures, the cults. So if you want to see a horror game set in Rome, you can always look at Cohorts Cthulhu, which actually is this. So there are several different games actually set in Rome. I think it's Invictus Cthulhu as well, sets this in Rome. And you have Cthulhu Dark Ages, which places Cthulhu in the Dark Ages.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So it's, yeah.
We have options.
Yes, we have options.
Definitely.
As you mentioned about doing crossovers.
Oh no, I was just saying it's also a great excuse to just learn more about different areas of history as well. Yeah, Matt, please after you.
Yeah, as you mentioned about crossover material, thinking of having like ghosts in Star Trek, which God help you if you're Beverly Crusher, your character's going to be taken up for a while with that one.
No.
You also
that was no real ghost.
Mentioned
that was no real
not
ghost.
something just masquerading as.
No.
Yeah, I think as various people have mentioned, the Chronicles of Darkness games, Vampire the Requiem did their Requiem for Rome. So if you wanted to add another curveball, crossball there, you could have the Cthulhu mythos and vampires running around.
Hell yeah. I mean, why wouldn't you want that? That sounds great. Awesome. I'll move us on to another question. Someone
That's a good
mentioned the
one.
word mundane. So I was like, ooh, alarm bells. Because Dee, you kind of mentioned mundanity as a potential topic for us to look at. So my question is, how do you find horror in the mundane? And further to that, what's the appeal of finding horror in the mundane in our sort of RPG scenarios? Oh,
Dee,
Dee,
you're
you're on
muted.
mute.
I did mute myself. Thank you. I forget about that. Yeah, since I brought up the concept of the mundane, I will. So I really like the idea of taking something that is an ordinary, mundane activity or object and turning it on its head and turning it into a horror idea. And one of the ways that I like seeing that and doing that is existential horror. The kind of revelation that the thing that you're doing, the thing that seems normal, mundane, uninteresting, just I'm taking my dog for a walk, I do it every single day. It's routine, but then there is something unexpected or just unnerving happening. I think the ability to take something, an ordinary object or a routine activity, and turn it into I'm trapped in this loop of doing this mundane activity over and over and over again. Every time it ends, it starts over again. Or I have the existential horror of realizing that I have been, you know, there is no other, there is no end to this, or there is something, this is meaningless. The isolation of feeling like you're the only one who saw something absolutely bonkers or strange or horrific, and everybody else around you is just passing by as though nothing weird is happening. There's all sorts of ways to take a normal everyday activity and then turn it into something just, oh no, now I'm afraid to get in the shower because I just had this experience, a game experience where the shower became the point of a horror story.
Mm,
And it seems so normal, but now I'm afraid of it. I think
yeah.
I think those are kind of fun ways to find unconventional horror.
And just using horror for that perspective shift.
Hmm.
Another
Well,
way to
yeah.
do this is, I think, is to change some small things.
Hmm.
Change things around the player characters. Suddenly they realize, wait a minute, there wasn't any warehouse in this address yesterday. Where did it come from? Or even
Hmm.
more cruel, the player characters are children. Suddenly they realize, or parents aren't our parents. There's something else. What's
Hmm.
going on? And you can also change small things around them, moving things about in the apartments when they're not there, or even when they are there, changing where the doors lead. Suddenly, the door in your apartment is supposed to lead to your bathroom, leads to your sleeping area, and the bathroom is gone. Or people around you doesn't know you anymore. Your best friend just say, I don't know you, go away. Who are you? I mean, small things that change can bring great horror to people. You don't have to bring into the heavy artillery at all. You can do this with very, very small means. So
Hmm.
it's one way of changing things slowly and bringing the horror in a very personal way.
Hmm.
Love that. Does anyone else have any thoughts on mundanity and horror?
Yeah, they said it really well. It's just the little shifts and little things that are off, like something out of place. I know for Curseborn, one of the adversaries was actually the Mondays where like going to work in the office kind of bled all of the joy out of your life. It was actually and something that afflicted you, and it's something that unless you were looking for it, you wouldn't think about it. It's just like, oh man, I just went to the office or something. You see, I mentioned it in the other panels too, talking about J horror, or something as simple as like making a phone call is uh, can be terrifying. Um, in Japan, they actually say moshi moshi, and that's actually because of during with the invention of the telephone, they believe that yokai couldn't say that. So in order to make sure that you're not talking to yokai or like some sort of like spirit or a supernatural creature, you would say moshi moshi. And if it was a yokai, they couldn't say that in sequence for some reason. So that was like an actual like cultural thing to protect yourself from the supernatural. So that's something
I
that's
had
super
no idea that was the
Same,
origin of that
that's
phone,
so interesting.
because I know it's just a phone greeting and not
Mhm.
a different, I
Yeah.
had no idea. That's amazing. I love that.
But it's something so mundane, or like that, that fear of technology where it's like, who's on the other end when, like the telephone lines go through the graveyards, and that's just receiving a phone call is just something so simple, and it's like, so it's like that fear of technology. It's something new, something mundane. You know, what happens when the little thing on you receive a package and it's a stuffed animal, and then all of a sudden the stuffed animal starts moving around. Uh, you know, it's it's something simple, very mundane, but it does something unexpected or it moves around. I threatened my son with this to make his backstory a little bit more dramatic because he's pretty normal about getting like a Chucky doll or something and moving it around when he's not paying attention. Uh, I haven't done that to him. He hasn't been traumatized, but I just thought that would be kind of like a fun gag. But
Like how you talk about your son's backstory.
he doesn't have a tragic backstory. He's just a normal kid, We're not mean to him. He has a pretty chill.
You got to get on that, Kim.
He's 18. It's too late. He just got to make stuff up at this point, but it's just normal things like right now, like my webcam has auto tracking on it, so it'll auto refocus if I move around or something happens. Now I also have motion sensors in my closet because I have a shelf there. So if the light turns on, it's something super mundane, or if my camera refocuses over here where the door is, it's going to be concerning. But it could happen. But it's something that's like normal. It's a normal thing that's technology. But if it happens unexpectedly, it's like, oh shit.
Puts the
What's
fear
going
in you.
on?
Yeah.
What's moving in my closet that's turning the light on? Or why is my camera refocusing?
Is it
Hello,
ghosts?
spirits.
Maybe.
Is it ghosts?
Or why is the dog sitting in the corner growling slowly at one
Cats,
specific
what are the
Staring at
cats
the wall.
looking at? Yeah.
Why is it
Yeah.
chirping?
Yeah.
It's so
It's
interesting
the
that like
evil monkey that lives in there.
Of course. It's so interesting that technology kind of keeps coming up as a theme. And we did have a comment from Link the Vampire in the audience saying that they remember someone during this con mentioned how internet catfishing horror seems to be the new home invasion horror. So again, with those kind of like technological updates and trends and changes in what we kind of can update our horror with and how we can kind of use new technology in sort of in terms of having unconventional settings, I think
Yeah,
is
I was definitely in that panel, and I can't remember if it was the panel I was on with you, Kim, or the one I was on with Matthew, where we talked about
yeah,
catfishing.
it was Matthew.
Okay, yeah. It just, yeah, it's social media as an avenue for horror is so fertile. I say that over and over again. It is a place where we all turn to, we all look for connection, and having a horror element come from something that we are so immersed in that it is uh, like baked into our lives now. Even folks who did not grow up with this have some social media presence, have some presence or understanding of the, these kind of internet things. And for, I'm not going to speak for Michael, but I assume that you even have, some very like, I started in, I started making games in the 80s, and there was none of this internet stuff. And now there's all of this internet stuff, and you either adapt or die kind of, as a game maker. So there's an inherent horror in having to learn things new, having to learn new things. Change is often scary. Getting left behind, isolation of learning something that everybody around you seems to already know. I think that those kind of stories, technology is just, it's new enough that there's so much that we haven't explored yet. There's some movies and media that started exploring technology as horror, but it's been moving and changing so fast that it's very ripe for kind of baked into our lives, and yet there's so much horror elements that could spring from it.
I think that like the earlier versions of that we saw in like Hammer horror, like early 70s, 80s, was the evil stepfather trope, where like the person that we've invited into our homes and lives is not the person that they say they are.
Yep.
And that would be like blind dates or like meeting someone through a classified ad or
Yes.
like the penny saver or something like
was
that.
like, yeah, we talked about where I was like the single white female horror film, right? Because that was a personal ad for finding a roommate, and that person became, a horrible thing. But that is now modern day catfishing is that.
Where people meet over a WoW server or an AIM chat room, and then they like that was like the early fear of the internet chat rooms, was that if your kids got on the internet, they were going to get abducted, because that kind of happened, where underage kids met up with people that they shouldn't have met up with, and they went missing, and then weird stuff happening that way. So like it's like things that were very much rooted in real life fears. I forget the name of it now. It was like the D. Snyder movie, where that was the big thing with the kid getting kidnapped and tortured. The people getting kidnapped and tortured. Shit, what was the name of the movie now?
I can't
But,
remember, but I am thinking about an episode, like an early episode of Buffy, where there's like a demon in the internet in the computer lab. Does anyone remember that? I don't know why that just sprung into my brain, but I do love particularly the older examples of kind of like technology and horror and stuff like that. And then like
Strangeland. There we are.
Ooh, yes. Yeah, lots of fun examples of bringing in technology, definitely. Did anyone else have anything to add to that, or shall I move on?
Only that I actually find technology fascinating. So I started out majoring in computer technology, and I usually build my own computers. So I'm quite comfortable with the change of the world. But of course, there are other people who find this a lot more distressing. So, for example, here in Sweden, we have a debate about, we have something called an ID that's only available on your smartphone. And this ID is used for almost everything. You can't really access your bank. You can't really access the social services. You can't get a loan. Almost everything is impossible unless you do have this bank ID on your phone. And people over the age of 80 usually have some kind of problem with this. And you also have the problem that your phone goes out of style. And when it starts getting too old, the bank ID program app stops working. And this is kind of a horror story for people as well. I mean, it's kind of horrible as realizing suddenly that you can't log into your bank, you can't change or shift money about, you can't pay your loans, you can't even book a ticket for the trains anymore because they use the bank ID as well. We have no offices for buying these things anymore here in Sweden. So a way to actually get people to kind of disappear, even though they're still here, is finding a way to stop this ID working for some people. So a nice horror story would probably be one day suddenly 10% of Sweden's population woke up and found out that they can't access their bank IDs anymore. And nothing they do can change this.
Yeah, it reminds me of like I've only mostly seen it in comedy shows, to be fair, but like the idea of it is quite terrifying. The idea of being like legally dead, and just completely out the system like that, and just like almost it reminds me a bit of there's a season of the Fargo TV show as well, where there's like one of the characters isn't getting recognized by like automatic doors or like automatic hand dryers and washers, and just isn't like technology goes on the fritz whenever she tries to use things, and she's just being made like obsolete in the way that she can't. And I'm like, that's terrifying. Yeah, really, really scary. So you could be like a party of characters of people who've come together in a support group or something. So we were all just unrecognized, and yeah, it's just proper scary. So I think that's an amazing example, Michael, of like
I
in
think
Sweden
it's horrible, but it works very well for us to actually have a smartphone. It's an excellent help for everything, but I can see the horror here for people who really can't use it.
And I suppose in terms of the mundane stuff as well, I was just thinking, as somebody who used to work in an office, and now works where I'm sat right now. It's kind of, you have those mundane environments actually, which are also constantly sort of part of people's lives, which they might not necessarily get comfort from, but it's a kind of an environment that you expect. So you've got like the office environment where there are all sorts of opportunities for something that's very grey and mundane, but then you take it down the severance route, or you take it down the back rooms route, or you go into. I was just thinking, like things like I used to sit in a traffic jam as I commuted, and I would be stuck there for an hour, and the prospect of being, stuck in a tiny metal container, which ultimately, if something were to happen, what are your options? You are surrounded by lots of very angry people, probably, who are also, getting frustrated and angry. And I'm wondering, equally, we've mentioned the notion of, expanding the horror of the environment in terms of being online. I don't know. Have we fished around in the world of home working as a it's the next development of people who actually won't connect anymore with the idea of being in an office. They won't have. There are some people who will never have been in an office, or maybe they were there for an induction or a training or something. But there will be more. There seems there will be new territory to explore in terms of it, and it connects into that notion of technology as well, not being identified by something or being in a situation where fake the sort of not fake news, but sort of people, the environment that you're seeing at the other end of your Zoom call, is this entirely fabricated, manufactured? Are people who you spend time with day to day real? Or there seems there's all sorts of. I fully expect that there will be more and more sort of consideration of things that really have only just started to become true mundane normality. After the COVID business, that's now dulled to the point where it's just the new normal, and the new normal is that mundane experience.
Yeah, and I think like with that sort of thing, or if we successfully shift from going into the office entirely, then going outside the house to go to the office now becomes that horror. Is like, what is going on? Where is everything? Why is my key card not working? Why don't I have a signal in this building? What is that weird noise? Why are the lights doing that? So those sorts of little things will be pretty interesting things to explore. We were just talking about the auto tracking. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see how things shake out in the next 5 years, I would like things have changed so rapidly now. You know, where like in the COVID time where people were accidentally applying cat filters during office meetings and it made the news, or people were watching inappropriate things in Parliament and it ended up on TV. It's like, oh God, to be that person. And that's like, that's sort of like, that could have been anybody. Uh, it's like, oh God, what's happening on that meeting? Uh, So yeah, definitely some interesting places to go. Or like the rapid shift from physical media to digital media, and then the digital media going away. I know there's a couple of the VHS horror anthology series has been exploring analog tapes in the realm of DVDs and going to different genres and doing those sorts of things where like I know with my sailors and talking to them, when I start talking about Betamax, they're like, "What the hell is that?" Or start talking about Laserdisc or A-Track. It's like, what's that? So yeah, it's a
Yeah.
very interesting place to be.
That actually, just as a small tangent, I did write not long ago an adventure that included a reference to a typewriter and had to put a sidebar in just in case, because
So
it's just
retro now to have a
yeah,
typewriter.
exactly. But I mean, what you're saying, and with the
Yeah.
tracking thing, I am immediately now thinking of all the possibilities. It's the tracking suddenly to see somebody doing something violent, or a they live type situation where the person off camera actually has forgotten that they might be followed by the camera sort of focusing in on them, and they've changed oddly, and it's but yeah, it is. We're back to the mundane from 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years ago. Like cassettes and stuff like that, or loading screens. But yeah.
Awesome. Someone mentioned about the horrors of home working. I read a book a few years ago called Several People Are Typing, like a short novel by Calvin Kasulke, and it's about a man who's working from home and his consciousness accidentally uploads into his work's Slack space. And it's fascinating, really weird. Yeah. And so there's some stuff out there about just how fucking weird, particularly around sort of the kind of the onset of the pandemic, how strange it was to adapt to all of that and all the new stuff it was bringing in for people, and also kind of, I guess, in terms of quite traumatic circumstances for everything changing as well. Like, I think there's maybe a lot of horror and things that we could be processing and exploring through that as well, for sure. So
Oh my God,
interesting.
yeah. I like the concept of several people are typing because just like that in itself strikes like a little bit of horror, where it's like somebody says something in like a Discord or Slack or something, and then you get the real time, like so and so is typing, another person is typing, and then several people are typing, and it's kind of like,
oh
I don't know
God,
what
what's
is about to
happening?
happen. So
The fear. The fear is real.
Yeah.
I'll move on to another question. As we're talking about unconventional settings, I'd love it if everyone could give a couple of examples of settings that you think aren't receiving a lot of attention, particularly for horror TTRPG scenarios. Basically, pitch us, which settings do you think deserve more love in the horror RPG space?
Well, last night we talked about how there just isn't a lot of fantasy horror as a genre of, you know, and not just fantasy horror in the sense of like D&D, but horror, but like we are in a fantastical, like there are, dragons and unicorns and magic and you know, it is fantastical fairies, things like that, but then there is some kind of horror associated with that is what is going on. So I like I w- I'm literally, as we're talking, noodling a secret project that since this is, I don't think this person will see it, but I'm not going to speak on it, but it is literally taking a beloved Christmas story that is fantastical and turning it kind of into a horror game.
Horror is always a fun combo.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it's interesting to me how you have to kind of, particularly in a more fantasy or sci-fi space, you're almost sort of setting up the conventions of Paul, I'm loving your cat, by the way. It's so great. Setting up what is conventional within that scenario and then subverting or breaking the convention, like within the
there's
kind
a
of the
lot of
logic
work.
of it.
Right. There's a lot of work to define the logic and then define what's horrific about it.
Yeah.
That makes that it's probably why there isn't a whole lot of it.
But it sounds like it would be very rewarding, though, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, I'll come back probably to the ordinary sci-fi horror. There's not enough sci-fi horror in the world, I believe. There's been some. I mean, for example, there were a Star Wars novel which actually contained stormtrooper zombies.
Ooh.
Which was kind of interesting. And they were real zombies. They were the undead. So that works, but it's not really that much. And I think it could be a very interesting subject and a very interesting field to actually have horror, because you can always put it either enough just for people to realize, wait, there's something strange going on here, like the ghosts. Or you can go all the way to almost alien-like subjects, but only this time it's the elder gods. It's actually invading the galaxy, and now Starfleet has to fight off Hustor and Azathoth. I mean, that would be an interesting battle. Well, goodbye, Starfleet, I'd say. But you can always... Another subject I would always love to see are children's series. Why aren't there any Teletubbies horror stories? Why aren't it My Little Pony horror stories?
I'm working on a horror Teletubbies drag act, so I can keep you
updated.
Nice.
I love that. Please, yes, great.
I'm going to be Lala, and I'm going to make a little TV, and I'm going to prize it, and my guts are going to come out. It's going to be great.
Oh, that's amazing, and I love it so much. But also, if you could do a TV that has the ring like character come out of it, like that would be even better.
A giant suit, and my friend will be like waiting in it. Yes. Just like, that's incredible. So maybe not in RPGs, but
Videodrome.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know about RPGs, but I'm drag-wise, I'm working on it, Michael.
Good.
I'm working on it. But sorry,
Great.
Please do carry on. Children's media, great for horror. Like,
yeah. There is a game, it's a video game, so it's not a tabletop RPG, but there is a game called Amanda the Adventurer. And it's a horror, but it's children's media horror. It's very good. It's kind of not escape room, but like a puzzle game that includes a lot of very much like, this is Amanda the Adventurer is a, young kids TV show, and it is horrific. So if you want inspiration for doing that kind of thing, I think that's a fun game to play, and it's really short indie game, so worth playing.
So one of my favorite series is the Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared YouTube / Channel 4 series, which
God, it's so good.
Takes puppets and makes it gory and horrible and disturbing. I love it so much.
So disturbing. I love it.
So some fun stuff for sure.
Yeah.
Paul, Kim, Matt, do you have any things you'd want to pitch?
Oh yeah, definitely sci-fi horror. That's something I really enjoy imposing on my play-by-post people, is like, because everything in like a sci-fi setting, usually for most of the things that people like to play are that sort of utopia where we are the strong ones. We have this sort of technology that trumps everything, and then introducing elements where it takes their main source of power and their weapons and making it terrible. It just makes your enemy stronger, and it becomes something very terrifying because it's like, oh shit, how do I deal with this? I got to get bullets. I have energy weapons, you know. So that's something I really enjoy. I see in the chat someone's talking about romance in horror, and like I know for like vampire, and we also do this in Curseborn, where that is an element, but it's not the main thing. So to do a romantic horror game where that is like, there's ways of approaching it, but it's also something that comes with a lot of caveats and lines and fails and safety tools, because if you make that your main thing, it's like you could do it as like you're in a toxic relationship or the person that you are with is not who you think they are, or you're not the person they think you are, and you're trying to navigate that space where, you know, discovering what is going on with you or your partner or both of you. It becomes like but then it becomes something like that can also become like a body horror sort of thing, which we don't see a lot of, I don't think, because people get very squicky about things happening to them. I know that for one, like for World Below, one of the original things was, hey, maybe this the world below is mutating you and changing your body to adapt to the scenario, and then it's like, oh my God, what is becoming of me? And we stepped away from that because like a lot of people don't necessarily like the body horror, and I love it. I would like to see more of it.
Too, actually. I think because I'm in a lot of Scott Dorward games. I always assume that this body horror is just a thing that's a lot of places, but yeah, so maybe I'm a bit skewed on that. But yeah, I love it. I think it's great. Yeah. Paul and Matt, do you have any pitches that you'd like to make for particular settings?
I normally accidentally do things anyway. So like when I was writing for Cimbrum, which is a sort of fantasy game which is more politically inclined, I pitched effectively a zombie invasion, which was impacting on a distant exploration outpost, but they weren't strictly zombies. There's some weird background material in Cimbrum that relates to an otherworldly place, and in this case, this was leaking through. And some of my weirdest experience with writing an adventure was when I got editorial feedback from somebody on their team who said, "Does this person think they're Lovecraft?" Because apparently I'd dribbled so much vaguely Lovecraftian stuff into the edge of a Cimbrum adventure that I had my wrist slapped to say, "Could you rein it back a bit?" I kind of like, weirdly enough, it is taking things that I like. I worked on paranoia, and I quite like the idea of pushing paranoia into a more horrible space. So I do have a setting that I've started called Lost in the Fold, which is like a combination between the mundanity of this enclosed environment where people aren't really aware that they are within a closed community and not even aware they're necessarily somewhere unusual, but with a kind of backrooms-esque, there is this environment behind the walls which you haven't really given a thought to. So you get very mundane adventures of, we'll go fix a pipe somewhere, and it rapidly leads into a rather more surreal and horrific environment, which begins to make people question what they're in. And I definitely completely randomly started watching Marvel Zombies the other night on Disney, and I would really like to do something with that.
Yeah.
Because
so it's that blending, isn't it?
Yeah, having this situation where you've got people with super, and I guess in a weird and wonderful way, maybe The Boys and stuff already has approached the gross out sort of horror of having superheroes who have powers that are vile and stuff. But something about Marvel Zombies, for example, has these sort of more upstanding superheroes are suddenly faced with this world where they are no longer the primary overbearing force, that their powers aren't enough to save them. And that kind of trips up people's sort of that sort of trope of these superpowered individuals, and makes it, adds this horror level that even they aren't enough to overcome the horde.
And we did actually get an audience question in on sort of like blending genres and different kind of systems, but which I might move on to next. But Matt, did you want to add anything to our series of pictures for a kind of what unconventional setting do you think deserves more love?
Yeah, I think one that I quite like, and it's certainly one of my favourite games. In fact, a couple of my favourite games scratched this itch, but I wish there were more out there. The first one being like mythological horror, or maybe tied into folklore horror. So the likes of Basin in particular, I'm thinking of, very much draws its inspiration from these creatures of folklore, but maybe spinning that, rather than just doing a Basin with serial numbers filed off, maybe twisting it into something a little bit more historical, even more so than the 19th century Sweden. Thinking of the roots of mythology. So going back to, again, mythologies of the ancient world, other cultures, there's so much that you can draw upon there, from real, he says in inverted commas, real world material, that I think that's just hideously underutilized. I think it's such a fertile ground for stuff. And tie that in, when you go far enough back, you start looking at mythology, then blurs into religion. So real world history that then spawns mythologies that turn into religions. It's like one of the hypothesized historical origins of the story of Noah being that it was the flood, the flood that he was escaping was the melting of the ice sheets that then turned into the formation of the Black Sea. So all these cultures that existed down there now are completely submerged. And then what things might still be down there, what's left of those remnants of cultures that might then bleed forth into the modern day, which, again, if you look at coming at it from a historical stroke religious angle, you could get one of my other favorite games, Heaven and Earth, which, again, criminally underused. No one talks about that game apart from me now. But yeah, those would be the ones that I would tend to advocate more. And feeding back to our previous question, also nice historical settings. No tech that can mess up your day, because tech hates me. They like dice. I must have done something in a previous life that must have angered the polyhedral dice, and something that angers anything with a microchip, because my Luddite field is just all pervasive and just messes up all tech around.
You could see it as something very powerful, though, to just walk into a room and do like, tech. Done.
I wish I could have it as a positive benefit. But,
I know. Yeah, indeed. Yeah. No, thank you for that. I definitely, as someone who's not a massive history buff, but always open to learning more, I just think it's such a great opportunity, isn't it? Just to kind of, embroil yourself in a particular slice of time or a particular place.
I agree, Matt. Yeah, I agree absolutely that supernatural horror and history absolutely go together. Because it is, and even now, as I am reading around the subject matter, it's weird how things just throw themselves at you. They're just aside comments. Academics have this tendency on focusing on things, and they say things as complete asides. And I have a little notebook which has all those asides in them. The little things, like one the other day, reading that somebody who effectively at one point would become a courtier of Queen Elizabeth, was put in the Tower of London, and was forced to. He was effectively he owed Queen Mary 30 tons of lead, which to what. Why did Queen Mary give this man 30 tons of lead? What was he promising? Why 30 tons? I mean, but what? Just completely random comments. This man was thrown into the tower. And yeah, why? What was going on there? And it's both weirdly mundane, but bizarre at the same time.
30 pounds of lead. That's a good scenario
30
title.
tons, though.
30
tons.
Tons
God.
of lead.
No,
What?
tons. Not.
Yes.
No, that's what got
That's a
me.
lot.
And funnily enough, I read it first, and I think I read 3 tons, and then I went back and thought, no, that says
Hang
30
on.
tons.
Tons of lead. What do you? I am making a lead-lined room for experimentation. There's no other reason to have that much lead.
It's the inflation from what was 30 coins of silver, but over
Yeah,
time the weights increased and the metals devalued too.
Yeah.
Maybe. It's like, geez. It's like that's a lot of lead.
A lot of lead.
That's some radiation shielding right there.
So
Yeah.
I believe we've got about 20 minutes left of our panel now. So if people do want to ask questions from the audience in the chat, I think I'll get a couple put through here if we do get them coming through. But we did have a question from Link the Vampire. Thank you for asking this earlier. And this is kind of about the genre crossing and blending that's kind of come up in what we've talked about a couple of times. Link has said, the Dreamlands are very strange, but I partly expect them in Call of Cthulhu, not so much in Vampire the Masquerade. Is it fair to borrow from other games and genres to break convention? I'm getting a lot of nods, and I'm like, yeah, do it.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Pull your Vampire the Masquerade characters into Riley. Send them into the Mountain of Madness. Pull a zombie horror trope into your Call of Cthulhu game. Pull a personal horror trope into your game that is yes, just pull bits and pieces from every genre of game that you want to pull from, or other game. They're all there as a toolkit for you to use in your game. Please go mad with them. You have all this power. Do it.
Yeah, it's
100%.
very much you should use whatever you feel will get your story across or tell something interesting. When you're doing it for your personal table, you don't have to worry about copyright or getting sued. You can do whatever you want. If you want to have like Cthulhu in your My Little Pony game, you go for it. You just do your thing, man. You don't have to worry about stuff like that. When we're writing, we have to, submitting something for publication, we have to very carefully consider things, especially if we include certain countries, and considering where our books get printed, we have to be very careful about what we include. But for what you do for your personal game, if you pull inspiration from, the originals, you pull inspiration from Buffy, you pull inspiration from She-Ra, Princess of Power, you pull from that. It's really how you mix things up to make it more interesting. Because no one wants to play a game that's the same game that everyone else plays at the same time, the same way. So you just pull all of your resources to get pull that cool idea and go forth. Enjoy.
Get weird with it. Yeah. Does anyone else have any comments on genre blending and bending and breaking?
Yeah, I was going to say that, ultimately what you're saying, and this reference to Dreamlands, I mean, that's what Lovecraft was doing to begin with, and the people who were around at the same time as him. I suppose it's the same with the likes of like Tolkien and the people who he hung around with. There was this, that's been going on for a very long time. People would add borrow things, and the likes of Lovecraft were not only borrowing things, but then, when he went into his editorial capacity, he would start adding things to other people's stories. So, he was creating this mythos was growing, even while he was, there, because he was quietly sort of introducing it into other people's works. But it is definitely, it feels like, as you say, if there's no copyright involved, at your table, you go for it, because we have all these things that people are familiar with, and so it feels like, again, it's the notion of taking something as like a children's TV program or something that's really first and foremost in people's minds, and turning it into something horrific. While at the same time probably being aware that it probably needs to be something that's not necessarily right now. The trouble with something being really topical is maybe it will be more triggering because it's happening now and you're going to potentially trip over things. So maybe we'll wait a few years before we got our Trump-based horror or something like that, because in the moment maybe it will be too much to drop on people.
Yeah, like, for example, if we've still got someone from the English Civil War still kicking about, that's his whole own horror problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is a cult scenario, which is like Rocket's Red Glare, where it's Trump. That is his thing.
Oh, well.
I think Jax wrote that.
Ooh, sounds juicy. I want in.
Oh, yeah. It was a few years ago that during the first administration that she wrote that.
Yep.
There's also, I think, a tongue-in-cheek reference in one of the last Cthulhu for President releases, which was the King in Orange. Well, that term King definitely has taken on a whole new angle now, hasn't it?
Yup, that's has it aged badly or perfectly? I can't decide.
Little of column A, little of column B.
Yeah, bit of both. Yeah.
Thinking of kind of that blending of or drawing inspiration from other places. Yeah, wholeheartedly for your own game, go ahead and do it. But maybe with a little hint of some advice you can get from that sage lawyer, counselor, groundskeeper Willie from the Treehouse of Horror episode of The Simpsons, where he said, "Don't you mean Shining? No, it's Shining. Don't you want to get sued?" But just be careful that you maybe file most of the serial numbers off, but just enough to leave hints about where you brought these moments of inspiration from, and then you can have for those of you that get the Easter eggs or those little references, you can get a sly smile out of people.
And do realize. Sorry.
No, there is definitely lag, like I said, about technology hating me and me hating it. Go ahead.
No, I was saying that quite a lot of things that Lovecraft wrote and other authors at the same time wrote are now in the public. You can use them. There are some specific items that are trademarked or copyrighted by Chaosium and other companies, but it's quite easy to find out what on Chaosium's website. You can easily find what you're not allowed to use and what you're allowed to use. So we can even actually make commercial products and selling them containing parts of the Cthulhu mythos because Lovecraft is now in the public. So just be careful and check out with the company whose rights you're looking at or perhaps infringing and see what is actually free and what's not.
Remember, Steamboat Willie, not Mickey Mouse. Is there any Steamboat Willie horror scenarios? Probably.
There are some horror movies now, actually.
Yeah.
With Mickey Mouse and Paddington. So,
and I believe Winnie the Pooh.
Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah.
In a Popeye horror.
Yeah.
Amazing. We do have a little bit more time. I don't think there were any other questions from viewers, but apparently there's been a very lively chat, which is lovely to hear. And I guess if anyone else has any maybe final shortish pitches for sort of settings, it's so interesting. Kim, you were saying about the kind of romance horror kind of crossovers. I've been listening to the quite newish podcast Push the Roll recently. It's from the people who did Ain't Slayed Nobody, and they did a great. It's very improvised. Basically, they get given a title idea and then they just build it up from there, and it's really good fun. And they did a rom-com called a Cthulhu scenario recently, and I was like, that's amazing. It was just so good. I really recommend it, and it's got me thinking I want to play some rom-com Call of Cthulhu games, proper like 90s noughties rom-com kind of tropes, and how you can kind of inject horror into that. It was great. So that's my pitch. I think more horror rom-coms. Yes, please.
So,
Oh, go ahead, Dee.
I find sometimes like pacing in horror is a thing that, is sometimes hard to do because the horror comes from the absence of the normal, the unexpected, the you know, the buildup of attention and then the release of it, things like that, right? So if you have too much just like horror, there's no relief, then it stops being horror and it starts being the norm. So you must pace it with comedic relief or a moment of reprieve of some sort. There needs to be breathing room for the horrific elements to really feel horrific. And there needs to be some player investment and some other things, especially in an RPG. And comedy is one of the things that people will like. I've seen a lot of, comedy horror movies. There's, Shaun of the Dead and some other kind of things. And I feel like horror is a great thing to inject in an otherwise other type of genre because it then becomes more horrific when you're not expecting horror at all. Now, of course, don't completely jump scare your players with something horrible
Yes.
without talking to them first. Like, hey, is it okay if our, game of thirsty sword lesbians includes a horror element every now and then? Talk to them about that first. But I think it can sometimes have more impact if you're doing a genre, any kind of genre game, and then you have an unexpected horror moment because it winds up having a huge impact of, oh, this is terrible and horrific and scary. Now back to our normal scheduled programming, which
As
is
if it
not any of
never
those things.
happened.
Right. And then, there's moments of unease and filtered with comedy. And I always like comedy and horror kind of go together really well, in my opinion. Just because the change from tears to laughter or screams to laughter is just very organic. Some people react differently to fear and differently to stress, and a very common coping mechanism for stress is to just start cracking jokes.
I wouldn't know anything about that myself. So.
Right. Yeah. And, our entire generation of meme culture would have nothing to say on that matter. So I think having an RPG that is on its surface comedy, but is actually a horror game, or on its surface horror, but drops these just very ridiculous comedic elements is something that there's very few games that really hit on it. I think Paranoia is, ultimately a comedy game that you can inject horror into. They came from games that are, they came from Beyond the Grave, which is ultimately a comedy game about horror movies. So there's a couple of, also, it came from the Late Late Show, which is kind of a precursor to the They Came From games. All of those kind of games, but there aren't a lot of those kind of games. And so seeing a game that actively wants you to incorporate ridiculous elements into otherwise horrifying situations, I think people find a lot of connection to those things because it does kind of reward them for being silly while also keeping up this, no, actually, the situation you're in is pretty terrifying.
Sometimes if you don't laugh, you cry.
Yep,
right?
exactly.
I'll maybe take one more suggestion before we do just leave a little bit of time for some outros and some plugging of wonderful things that people are working on. If anyone had one, if not, we can we can move on to the plugging of the wonderful things. Go for it, Matt.
I was going to. There was one thing that flashed up on my screen, which I believe was a comment in the chat that there was about the concept. Oh, you've lost your phone; it's horrific. I was actually going to recommend a short story that got turned into a film, which was kind of an inspiration of flipping that trope in reverse. of when someone has found a lost phone. So if you haven't come across a Nathan Balagood collection called The Atlas of Hell, which was originally published as the collection Wounds, and then subsequently filmed as this story in that collection called The Visible Filth, became the Netflix film Wounds. Revolves around a very mundane setting. It's a bar in New Orleans, where just an ordinary guy who's working this menial job there finds after a bar fight, someone has dropped a phone. And then he picks it up thinking, I'll be able to give it back to them when they next turn up at the bar, and just casually unlocks the thing, and horror ensues when he sees what's on that thing. So yeah, definitely recommend that if you haven't come across it.
Very intriguing. Yeah, oh, that's great. I think yeah, I've got a few minutes left now, so maybe we do some outros. And yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for this amazing panel. I feel like I have so many ideas and things to think about, and media to go away and take a look at as well. Yeah, thank you so much. I'll do the rounds in reverse order for outros, and yeah, feel free to just say a little about yourself and anything you're working on, anywhere people can find you and interact with your stuff. Matt, after you.
Yeah, you can find me over at the Good Friends of Jackson Elias, either on Discord or over on our website, blasphemoustomes.com. I suppose the most immediate thing on my desk to clear now is getting the next issue of our fanzine, The Blasphemous Tome, out to folks, which will have a couple of Call of Cthulhu scenarios in there from me and the aforementioned Scott Dorwood. So I imagine because it's got his name on it, the body horror will definitely inject itself into that at some way, at some form. Yeah. It's naming him why he's going to have it with a Dorwood scenario.
I was thinking earlier, Matt, it's like we have a podcast in-law in Scott. And I was like, what a horrible way of thinking about it. So I thought I'd just put that out there. And Dee, please tell us about things that you're working on and cool stuff happening.
Cool. I am, you can find all of my work mostly on DriveThruRPG. You can find links to that on my website, daniellelauzon.com. Also, you can find Curseborn, which just came out on PDF and POD, is #1 on DriveThruRPG right now, and you can pick up a copy. If you follow a link through my website, you will throw me a couple of coins when you make a purchase. There's an affiliate link there. So, or, I'm sure Kim has an affiliate link on her website. So if you want to follow her affiliate link and toss her a couple of coins, anything you purchase when you follow an affiliate link, it doesn't have to be the thing that was linked to. Any purchase you make gives the affiliate just a 1%, I think, kickback from the purchase. It's just a way for DriveThruRPG to thank folks for sending traffic their way. So if you're going to purchase anyway, follow an affiliate link, and you can find one, I'm sure, from Kim or from myself, or probably any of these lovely people who create have affiliate links lying about. It's just a thing I always tell people: if you're going to go buy a thing anyway on DriveThruRPG, find somebody's affiliate link and toss them a couple of coins, essentially. So Curseborn just came out. There's also some other stuff coming out soon that I don't know when, but At the Gates should be coming out soonish. The World Below has been out for a little bit. You can get a POD or PDF copy. The Curseborn Player's Guide just finished up its Kickstarter. You can go, I think you can go pledge on the Pledge Manager for it. Or if not, it will be up soon. And then also the Gloomhaven RPG should be available for purchase in the next little bit, sometime in the next couple of months, hopefully. But if you have not, if you're interested in Gloomhaven at all, which some people are and some people aren't, it's a dark fantasy game, but it's very mission-based and strategic role play. So it's more on the you can absolutely turn into horror, but it's absolutely on the side of fighting things that are horrific. That game was crowdfunded on BackerKit, and so if you just look for Gloomhaven on BackerKit, you will probably find the campaign, the Grand Festival campaign that did it. You can still late pledge for it, and we should be hopefully releasing a PDF version of it that is still a work in progress soon to backers. So if you get in on that, you may get a copy of the PDF sooner rather than later. So those are my things.
Awesome. Thank you, Dee. Kim, where can we find you and what have you been working on?
All right, so you can find me on my website, KimberlyGodwin.com or studioahnh.com with all of those links to most of what I've worked on. You can also find my stuff on Drive-Thru RPG and Drive-Thru Fiction. If you search Kim Godwin, you'll find all of my things. We recently released the Accursed Tales anthology, where we focus, which is actually like a lot of the stories that we wrote for the Curseborn anthology are actually romance horror stories. It was just kind of like a weird consensus we all went to. So if you want to take a look at that, I wrote the story Guilty by Design, where we explore that sort of space. I also have been working on this webcomic Touching the Abyss since 2004, and you can buy copies of that on Amazon, Google Books. You can also find that on Drive-Thru Comics. And with Sons of Singularity, we're going to be going to crowdfunding for Heaven is Red, which is Eldritch Horror in space, which I'm really excited for. So I'm getting to write some scenarios and some other things with them. And then, of course, At the Gates, I was the developer for the Jumpstart, A Damon's Bargain. Hopefully we'll see that soon. And there's a bunch of other stuff that just came out. Of course, Curseborn was my hey, cool, I have a professional horror credit now. Hooray. After so long. But that's it for me.
Amazing. Thanks, Kim. And Paul, where can we find you and what have you been up to lately?
So you can find me, Paul Baldowski, on Blue Sky. You can find justcrunch.com is probably the hub for various links leading to various other places, because I'm not going to go through my websites because they will get mentioned elsewhere. Just Crunch is also on Drive-Thru RPG and Itch. I'm working on the Desanction, a new edition of that, which kickstarted earlier this year. I'm also working on Corkboard or Kierkegaard, which is my Nordic noir investigation game based on the Merkabore system. Both of which should be out next year, but are on late pledging now. And probably Kirkbird is still creating a ruckus in the Swedish gaming community for the fact that I even wrote it or want to write it, and it wasn't a Swedish person. And I think professionally, my next thing is probably Underground Overground for the Rivers of London, which should be out next year from Chaosium. In print. I saw a copy of it at Dragon Meet and it looks marvelous, and that's definitely a game where I inject a wee bit of horror into the Rivers of London universe when I get the opportunity. So please, yes, and yeah, affiliate links. If you go to Blue Sky, the very first post which I have pinned is a bunch of affiliate links for Desanction, because it has an open license and some wonderful people have been writing material for it. So that's all good.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Paul. And last but not least, Michael, I'm going to be thinking about the Swedish ID system and the horror of it for a while now, I think. So thank you for that.
Well, actually, it's a great thing, but it could be horrifying if you lose your phone. Yes.
It's all perspective, right?
Yeah, it's all perspectives.
Yeah. Michael, what are you working on? And yeah, where can we hear more from you?
Well, you can find me and Gunilla on Facebook, actually. That's Gunilla Jonsson and Michael Petersen. But bear in mind that we really haven't had time to update this for a long, long time. So we hopefully get to be a bit better there. Most recently published items are in Swedish. So we have a source book over the city of Lund, which is called Sweden's Arkham, which has been very well received, but though in Swedish. Yes, you got it there. Great, great.
Cool.
I tend to try and go through it with Google Lens so I can understand what I'm reading. But yes, been on my path for a little while.
Good to see. Good to see. We are also at the moment, we have just sent to the publisher a Dragonbane campaign for Lone Wolf World, which will be published next year or the year thereafter. It's a rather huge campaign set in very different parts of the world. We're also working on a huge campaign and source book over Berlin for Cult Divinity Lost. This will be a huge project. We are just working hard on it now. We're also simultaneously working on a Paris source book with a small campaign for troubleshooters. And we're also working on an undisclosable film project, which will probably never work out, but you never know.
You never know. Awesome. That's great. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I'll just do a little outro for me. I've been Camille from How We Roll. It's been, really great to hear everybody's ideas and thoughts on this panel. If anyone wants to keep up with what I'm doing, usually what actual plays I'm appearing in and where, I am on Blue Sky. I am at Camille Brew, so CAMI and then brew like a cup of tea. And on there, I've got like a kind of one of those link amalgamators of like all the various things I've appeared in, and we'll just occasionally update. I'm mostly in How We Roll, and we have a really lovely friendly Discord. If anyone wants to come and chat to us lot in there, and all sorts going on. So those are the main things for me. Oh, and seeing as I mentioned drag stuff, if anyone is interested in weird drag, horror drag, that kind of stuff, I'm very much just in the UK, mostly in Sheffield, which is where I'm based. But I am called Freddie Finn. So that's Freddie Finn drag, like FREDDIEFINN drag, on Instagram. Hopefully at some point next year there'll be some weird Teletubby drag pictures up there at some point, because that's what I'm working on at the moment. So there you go. Awesome. So that's me. And I also wanted to say a massive thank you to Ryan from Illusion HorrorCon, who's been on the back end of things, doing all of the the back end stuff for us, which has been amazing. And thank you to Illusion HorrorCon for inviting us all onto this really awesome panel and putting together this gorgeous convention. I think there's a hell of a lot of work going into it behind the scenes. So just wanted to say a huge thank you. And I hope that everybody's been having a really good weekend and a nice time at the con. But I think that's everything from us. If we want to all just say our goodbyes. Right. Bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.